to be back with you once again on the India Development Debate. This is an IDD direct. It's election season and farm loan waivers seem to be back in fashion and vogue. After Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan, Chhattisgarh has become Rajasthan has become the latest to write off all farm loans worth up to 2 lakh rupees. The question that a lot of people are asking is this going to lead to credit discipline erosion? Is there sort of a populist move to all of this? Are politicians going to compete with each other to do so? One man who's been very vocal about it is Niti Aayog's Vice Chairman Rajiv Kumar, and he joins us right here on ET now with his take on where the waiver battle debate is really headed. Thank you very much, Dr. Kumar, for being with us. And you say loan waiver is not the solution to address farm distress, but what about the immediate concerns? There is no denying that on the ground there are very, very grave concerns as far as our farms, our rural stress is concerned. Do we not need an immediate redressal?
I've never said that. I've never said that we don't need redressal for the farmers' problems, the farmers' distress. I've always maintained that the states are in the best position to diagnose this, to know the intensity of it, the extent of it, and therefore they are best placed to take the measures that they think are necessary at this stage. And that's been Niti Aayog's stand, and Niti Aayog has not made any other suggestions in this regard to tackle the current situation, because we are looking at the more medium term in the document that has been released.
No, I didn't really mean that you've said that it is not required, but you've also said this is palliative in nature, and one will agree with you when you say that it benefits a very small section because institutional credit is out of the reach for a lot of farmers out there. But why single out just the Congress party for pushing one? I mean, how do you, and I know you've been critical of that move, but how do you explain farm loan waivers done by BJP ruled states like UP and Maharashtra and very shortly after their own assembly elections?
I've not signaled out anybody. I've just said, the only comment I made was that the government and all governments are fully conscious of this, are fully aware of this situation, and therefore don't need to be woken up.
Okay, fair point. So at least you're saying that all ends of the political spectrum are responsible for heightening the debate on farm loan waiver. But Dr. Kumar, your strategy report that you put out in New India at 75 does say very clearly that 3/4 of the loans are taken for consumption expenses and not agricultural purposes. Now, does that not point to the glaring need of income support? And many people believe, does that not stoke the need for a review, a fresh relook at the universal basic income argument?
Well, I mean, I think we are jumping from addressing farmers' distress and the direct income support to them to the universal basic income, which then applies to the entire population. I think those are two very different kettle of fish, and I doubt if we would be able to implement the universal basic income with the practices and the agencies that we have. So I think it's better to retain our focus on the most poor, on the bottom of the pyramid, on the farmers. And at this stage, perhaps it may be premature to talk about the universal basic income and its implementation in our country.
Okay, Dr. Kumar, I'm going to go back to, I did digress and I'm going to not deny that, but I will go back to agriculture and reforming our agriculture and farms and all of that. One needs to modernize agriculture and there should not be, and there aren't two ways about it. But before that, do we not need to have mechanisms to absorb people moving out of agriculture? There are those, apparently studies say 40% of those presently involved in agriculture don't want to do it. They're doing it against their wishes. The question is, what are the alternative steps that have been taken? Where are the jobs that have been created to employ those who move out of agriculture? It's all very good to say, let's move people out of agriculture. It's not remunerative. What are they going to end up doing?
We have always thought of agriculture as a sector producing mere commodities. And secondly, we've always thought of agriculture as merely confined to cereals and grains and the food economy. Now, all this has changed and is changing, and we need to change that even faster. And what I mean by that is that if you diversify agriculture into fisheries, poultry, dairy, horticulture, floriculture, then its related logistics, which is warehousing, and others, there is in agriculture a huge scope for employment generation. If you move out of the food economy, if you get away from our pretty much obsession about the cereals in the grain economy, that's the first part of it. The second part of it is that if we agree to the fact that a mere, I think, 10% or 11% of our agricultural output is processed and the rest is not, and that about 20% is wasted, then one would recognize the importance of making agriculture and the farmer a part of the value chain. And this is why the strategy document, the strategy for New India at 75, talks about facilitating the growth of agripreneurs. Because if you shift the farmer from being just a commodity producer to the producer of products, to the producer hopefully even of branded products, to be able to take part in export of agricultural commodities, I think you will generate a huge amount of employment in sectors related to agriculture and based upon agricultural activities. So, the old notion, the traditional notion that there is a movement out of agriculture, the old Lewis model that labor moves out of agriculture into manufacturing and then into services. I think that's true to an extent, but there is a significant absorption capacity within agriculture, a diversified agriculture, and an agriculture which is adding value and where value addition is the norm. Think of countries like New Zealand, where agriculture is one of the principal, the major part of the economy, but this is all highly value addition and employment and generates employment as well. We could do that in India. So therefore, one shouldn't look at this static way of shifting labor out and absorbing it elsewhere.
Okay, so let's not look at agriculture in the in the old sort of a way, but let's look at what our neighbors have done. And I know small holding is blamed very often, that less than 2 hectares, and that is responsible for agriculture not being remunerative. But look at what our neighbors in China have done, and China's holding is actually half of ours. China absorbed the unskilled agri masses that were moving out of agriculture into construction, and that's what the infrastructure revolution did. How does one make the same possible in India? Because forget about our construction being robust enough to employ the existing unskilled laborers. How are we going to ensure it employs those moving out of farming? And that can be quite a game changer.
You see, when China did this 30 years ago, when they started, the technology situation was completely different. Now you have technologies which can build 20-story high buildings in less than 6 months. It's all getting very automated, etc. Same thing with manufacturing. The absorptive capacity of the manufacturing sector, the labor absorptive capacity of the manufacturing sector, and I dare say to some extent the real estate sectors, is not the same as it was 3-4 decades ago. Now, that's not to say that these sectors should not be growing much faster. Yes, of course, they should be growing much faster. This government is doing, as you know, has done much better in growing the roadways and the construction and the highways at 3, 4, 5 times the rate at it was going in the past. So that's where labor absorption is taking place. The Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, both for Grameen and urban areas, is there, which is growing, which is putting in together 10 million houses for the poor in almost a record time. So those are absorbing labor. Yet we know that because of our young workforce, because of our young population, we need to keep generating more and more jobs. And this, as I said before, and I repeat myself, could viably come from sectors related to agriculture itself, because that sector needs to be growing at a much faster pace. The growth of our agro-processing industry has been very slow, very poor, much slower than the real construction industries. Why is it that we are not thinking about growing that agriculture, that sector, and in attracting private investment, attracting foreign direct investment into that sector, which can also absorb labor in a more significant manner?
I do want to take the focus away from this and talk to you really about the market side reforms. And have we missed the bus despite a strong political mandate that this government had? I mean, why should we not abolish APMC? Why should the Essential Commodities Act not be done away with? In fact, to my surprise, Maharashtra did try and abolish APMC. It made a beginning and then had to retract. Is there a serious, is there a serious attempt to look at some of these things beyond just the loan waiver and MSP? And these are obvious sitting ducks.
Well, we've made those recommendations very strongly in the strategy document, and our recommendations are of course completely party agnostic. And you would see that those recommendations of for example, the implementation of the APLM Act, and the abolition of the Essential Commodities Act, the lifting of the bans on any bans on exports, the replacement of CACP with the Agricultural Tribunal, the creation of agripreneurs. I mean, all of those are recommendations that Niti Aayog has made for the states to implement. Agriculture, however, remains a state subject, and therefore it is the prerogative of the state governments to implement these suggestions to the extent they think is feasible in their circumstances. We can't impose upon them. That's no way that we can. And I think that the role of the Niti Aayog in the spirit of cooperative federalism is to put forward the suggestions that we think are best, are most suited, and are of a generic nature, and then for the states to determine what they can and cannot do.
But Dr. Kumar, while I agree that your strategy document does talk about some of these things, but is the trouble also a consumer bias while dealing with agri issues? I mean, the minimum export price being low, ban on export of agri commodities, to name just a few things. I mean, I know this was done at a time when inflation was very high, but then inflation is extremely benign, and some of these things continue. So obviously there is a consumer bias even while we formulate policies for agriculture.
But we have recommended the lifting of that. We've in fact said that let's balance the consumer and producers interest much better through the in agriculture, and we've also said that we need to encourage the farmers and allow them the freedom to sell wherever they like. We've talked about improving the reducing the costs of production for the farmer, improving the irrigation system, etc. So at least in our strategy document, you will not find that there is a consumer bias to our policy recommendations.
Dr. Kumar, I understand that the debate is obviously getting increasingly politicized, with every politician taking pot shots at each other, and there is this competitive populism of sorts. But the moral dilemma, and this does get quoted very often, is the contention of haircuts for big corporate loans and actually reading out the Riot Act on credit disciplines when it comes to agriculture.
No, I don't think so at all. I think there is no tolerance now in the government for any corporate to get away with malpractices and not pay their dues, and you've seen that in action. After all, in the implementation of the insolvency and bankruptcy code, where the NCLT is now dealt with more than 1,000 cases, which are and disposed of about 300-400 of them, does show that this government at least has never had any tolerance for misdemeanor or moral hazard perpetrated by the corporate sector, and none at all. I think our record, we inherited non-performing assets of 8.5 lakh crore. That's what we inherited, and that's what we're trying to grapple with and bring them down and recover them, so that the banks do not get a haircut as earlier. There are so many backlog cases which have now come for the insolvency and bankruptcy under the code and gone before the NCLT, where at least the average recovery is 46%. Earlier it was 0. So that's the record that this government has, and we have improved our rankings in the world on corporate exits and on enforcing contracts. So not at all. We are not for a minute endorsing not just endorsing. We do not accept any misdemeanor or malpractice on part of anybody, whether in the corporate sector.
Dr. Kumar, but one of the questions that I've always wanted to ask is that why can't more states look at the Telangana model, the Raitam Bandhu, the flagship scheme, which provides 4,000 rupees per acre per crop as agri input assistance, and this is not wasteful. This isn't used for consumption. This is actually for agri input. Is there merit in a scheme like that, and shouldn't more states and perhaps push in that direction?
As you know, that that particular scheme comes over and above all the input subsidies that the farmers get in Telangana. I suppose it's what you need is an estimation of total costs and the fiscal cost of such a scheme when implemented at the all India level. You know, somebody should do that and see, and the states should do that, and to see whether that's feasible for them in their current fiscal situation.
So, Dr. Kumar, how much of a concern really is populist farm loan waiver? I referred to this as being competitively populist. There is this growing sense that given the assembly elections, the Modi government that has so far refrained from blatant populism could opt for a huge farm loan waiver in 2019. How big a concern is that on an economist's mind?
I have not discussed this in Niti Aayog, and you know, this is something that we have not been able to, we've not addressed in our document, and you know, that we will see how the situation unfolds going forward.
We just hope that policymakers will keep their ears close to the ground and continue to listen to economists like yourselves when they decide on that one. But a quick last question, and this question is really more philosophical than factual at many levels. I've done debates after debates for a while now, but have our farmers in some sense been treated as a liability for way too long? And for a sector that employs 70% of our people, contributes to just a shade under 20% of the GDP, has agriculture got its due attention, or has it been reduced to an issue that accrues political dividends? And this is true for both ends of the political spectrum.
If there was one government where this charge is totally refuted, it is the current Prime Minister Narendra Modi's government. The peasants, the farmers have received the utmost attention from this government. We are the only government which has implemented the Swaminathan Committee report. We've got the Pradhan Mantri Sampada Yojana going. We've got the Pradhan Mantri Krishi Sichai Yojana. We've come up with the ENAMs. We've got the Fasal Bima Yojana. We provide credit to the tune of 10.5 lakh crore to the farmers every year. To say, given all of this, that the farmers have remained just an issue and a political vote bank is completely wrong for this government. This government, the farmers, the Prime Minister's call for doubling the farmer's income and making him or her a part of the agricultural value chain, by converting him into agripreneurs, by ensuring that he's not reduced to that, a commodity producer, but becomes a value addition producer. I mean, I don't know how we can say this about this government. I think this government deserves to be recognized for the attention that it has given to the farming community.
All right, agripreneurs, I don't know if that new term is going to change the fate and the form of India's farms that are acutely distressed. But on that note, Dr. Rajiv Kumar, thank you very much as always for sparing time and speaking to us on what really is a big issue that has gathered not just political momentum, but has got a lot of economists alarmed as well. We take a quick breather. There's plenty more right here on ET Now. Stay with us.